Is back into it in Chester. Here's El Senior. Yes! Yes!
The center back, Jacob Glesnes,
He's going for it.
Yes! Oh my goal! What a goal!
And that will do it. One of the best comebacks in recent years. 3 unanswered by the Union. And they go into the Gold Cup break, winning it 3-2.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and after Saturday's disappointing 4-0 loss to Charlotte FC, we waited another day to record this podcast so we could watch the LAFC and Portland Timbers game. And unfortunately, the Portland Timbers fell to LAFC 2-1, handing LAFC the Supporters Shield. Is that a big deal to some Union fans? Yeah, it is. Union Twitter was in complete meltdown once that game ended. And honestly, for me, just looking at the history, where I believe it's, 7 teams in MLS's 26-year history has won both the Supporters Shield and MLS Cup. And so history will show you that it is not typical for a team to go win the Shield and win MLS Cup. I believe the last team to do that was Toronto in 2017, I want to say it is off the top of my head. I could be completely wrong, but I know for a fact it was Toronto to be the last team to win both MLS Cup and the Supporters Shield. And this year was not meant to be for the Union to win the Supporters Shield. And yeah, Union fans would have loved for them to see the club lift yet again another Supporters Shield. It wasn't meant to be, wasn't the end of the world in my opinion. The result down in Atlanta, the 0-0, I didn't think that was a bad result at all for the Union. Yeah, the Charlotte result was bad, and I'll go ahead and give my thoughts here on a little bit on that. But again, I don't think it was the end of the world as some Union fans were making it out to be on social media. Because look, we all know, and I was having this conversation with friends of mine that live in England, where they still can't really wrap their head around how are you not the champion if you win the regular season? Because we all know in Europe, in South America, it doesn't matter. Everywhere but America, if you win the regular season, you're the champion. But we know how we do it here in America. You have playoffs. And like I said, my friends in England really can't wrap their head around that. And I'm sure, other people around the world too look at MLS and like, how can you win the league and not be the champion? And I'm okay with that, not winning the Supporters Shield, because I said it before in this podcast where I think the number one trophy in MLS is the MLS Cup. The most prestigious trophy that an MLS team can win is MLS Cup. And then the next trophy for me would be CCL, and then the next trophy after that would be the Supporters Shield, and then the US Open Cup. And as much as it would have been nice to see the Union win the Supporters Shield, you mean to tell me you honestly believe LAFC to just roll through the West and get to the final? Because in my opinion, I don't think that's going to happen at all. And if the Union take care of business this upcoming Sunday against Toronto FC, they'll win the East. They'll be the number 1 seed in the East, and the East will have to come through Chester, have to come through Subaru Park. And if I was a betting man, I would not put money on LAFC reaching the final. I would not. Yeah, they've won the regular season, but we've seen them be so inconsistent. And at times against Portland on Sunday, they didn't look great either. And so to see Portland leaving until late, a late goal they gave up, yeah, that's a tough blow. But yeah, I don't trust LAFC to just roll through the West. But we'll see. And like I said to you guys, we'll talk about this Charlotte game. I have news. Yes, we have some news to talk about finally. And then we'll go ahead and give Blunder of the Week. There really isn't anything else to talk about in this podcast, so we'll see how long it goes. But without further ado, let's just get straight into the news. All right, so I'm extremely excited to finally announce this to you guys. Where, if you guys remember, a couple of weeks ago, I told you guys I had big news to share with you guys, and I hadn't said anything for the last couple of weeks. But I'm super excited to announce that I've been invited to participate in Podcast Row at the 2023 United Soccer Coaches Convention in Philadelphia from January 11th to January 15th. And I hope to see some of you guys there. This convention is the ultimate event for soccer coaches, administrators, and fans of the beautiful game. Ignite your passion through captivating presentations, on-field demonstrations, exhibits, and networking events for coaches at the youth, high school, college, and pro levels. Whether you're attending alone or bringing the whole coaching staff, there's no better place for soccer coaches to learn, network, and experience the latest trends in soccer education. Register now for the lowest possible price. Visit www.unitedsoccercoachesconvention.org to register, and I can't wait to see some of you guys there in Philadelphia at the Philadelphia Convention Center from January 11th to January 15th. And when I got this email about a month ago, I was super excited. And it was funny enough, when I got the email, it was through my website. And, I have conversations all the time with some of my friends. I'm like, I don't even know if anybody reads the articles I put on the website. I don't know if people actually go to the website when I say, go check out thefreekick.net. But sure enough, I get an email inviting me out to this United Soccer Coaches Convention in Philadelphia. And I'm like, this is unreal. And so there's been a lot of planning from my end going into, okay, how do I want to do this? Definitely not going into the convention hosting by myself. I feel like it would be way too awkward to have people just coming down this convention center, listening to each of the podcasters that are going to be there. And I'll be there by myself just talking into the mic. And I know you guys are like, well, you do that already. But I don't know, like in person, live, like I feel like that would be strange. Now, maybe it would be a little bit different if I have an audience, but I'm like, no, I've got to have a co-host. And I'll announce something here who's going to be joining me at the convention. I'm definitely going to have a co-host. It's somebody, I will tell you, that has been on this podcast before, has been a fan of the Philadelphia Union since they were announced as a team. Has been a Sons of Ben member since the very beginning, and so I can't wait to have him join me again on the podcast live at the United Soccer Coaches Convention in Philadelphia. There will be more information to follow if you guys are interested in signing up for this event, and I'll give you guys a list here in the next month or 2 months once I get that of some of the coaches, potential players, other podcasters that are going to be at this event. And so again, if this is something that you guys are interested in, make sure to check it out, and would love to see some of you listeners there at the convention. I'll leave a link in the bio where you guys can get your tickets for that. But yeah, I cannot believe that the website actually worked. Somebody found the podcast through the website, and I got to give a big thank you to all of you guys, the listeners. Like, seriously, you guys just continuing to support this podcast by sharing it on social media, by leaving reviews on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. And if you guys haven't done that, I mean, go ahead and do that. And yeah, I've said in the past, give it a 5-star. 5-star looks like the best, but whatever you guys feel comfortable leaving the podcast, go ahead and give it a review, because the more reviews the podcast gets, the more people that the podcast reaches. And it's not just people in Philadelphia and New Jersey that are listening to this podcast. We have more than 25 states listening to the podcast. We have people worldwide listening to the podcast. And all that is done because of you guys continuing to share this podcast on social media, to tell coworkers, to tell friends about this podcast. Like I said, leaving reviews. That goes a long way. And because of that, I get opportunities like this to go and network and potentially grow the podcast into something bigger than what it already is. Because, at the end of the day, I think you guys can all agree, we want to see this podcast just rise above, be enormous, to get more people listening to not only me, but you guys come on this podcast too, talking about the Philadelphia Union. We want more people paying attention to the Union. And so this convention is going to be a great way for me to just expand the podcast and just really reach out and network. And hopefully you guys can be there as well. But let's go ahead and talk about some more news. I want to get that out of the way because it's been killing me that I hadn't been able to share that with you guys, and now I'm finally able to share that with you. But MLS last week, they announced the nominees for the 2022 End of the Year Awards. The Union have 7 players nominated, where you go ahead and look. MVP, each team, you're only allowed to nominate a maximum of 2 players for each category. And so the Union's MVPs, no surprise here, Andre Blake and Daniel Gazdag. Goalkeeper, Andre Blake. Defender, Jacob Glesnes and Kai Wagner. Newcomer, Mikael Ua. Young player, Leon Flock, which I think Jack McGlynn definitely should have been in there. Jack McGlynn should have been nominated for young player. How he was not, it blows my mind. And then comeback player, Julian Carranza. And honestly, how many of these players do you guys expect to win awards? And I'll go ahead and say it now. Because of that performance in Charlotte, Andre Blake is not winning MVP. Daniel Gazdag is not going to win MVP. The MVP, in my opinion, is going to go to Hani Mukhtar, a guy who I said should have won it last year, who will definitely be getting my vote this season. And it doesn't matter what Daniel Gazdag does in the final game against Toronto. I don't care if he wins the Golden Boot. Andre Blake let up 4 goals, even though, they weren't his fault. But if Andre could have kept a clean sheet in the game against Charlotte and a clean sheet against Toronto, then I think Andre Blake 100% should have won MVP. But because of that performance in Charlotte, he's not getting the MVP vote. And so Hani Mukhtar is going to be my pick for MVP. Some of you guys might cringe at that. Some of you guys might call me a traitor, Billy. Some of you guys might say it's Drusy. But in my opinion, the 2022 MVP has to go to Hani Mukhtar. Goalkeeper Andre Blake is 100% going to win that. And I know I just got done talking about, his performance against Charlotte was not great. That's why he's out of the MVP running. But just because he's out of the MVP running doesn't mean that he's not going to win Goalkeeper of the Year. He's 100% winning Goalkeeper of the Year. It's strange to talk about a goalkeeper being one of the finalists for an MVP award, but those 4 goals for MVP, his numbers start to go down a little bit, where, he's still putting up MVP numbers, but they're not at the historic level where I was talking about with Phil Whetten in previous episodes as well. So Andre Blake, in my opinion, will win Goalkeeper of the Year. A Defender of the Year, Jacob Glesnes and Kai Wagner should both win this award, with Kai Wagner at 15 assists. Jacob Glesnes has had one of the best seasons he's had in MLS since joining the Union. Might be his best. We saw him go to the All-Star game. I know a lot of Union fans were upset that Jack Elliott wasn't nominated for this. But again, you can only have 2 players for each team nominated for awards. And yeah, Jack Elliott definitely hard done, but there's no way you're taking Kai Wagner out of this list because of his 15 assists. So I expect both Jacob Glesnes and Kai Wagner to win this award. And I'll go ahead and give you guys my team of the season once we get closer to the award nominations. For newcomer, Mikael Ua, I don't think Mikael is going to win this. Facundo Torres has been fantastic with Orlando City. You can look at Cesar Araujo with Orlando City as well. There's a lot of great players nominated for this award. Thiago Armada with Atlanta. So I don't think Mikael is going to win this award. A young player, again, Leon Flock's not going to win this award. It's going to go to Thiago Almeida of Atlanta United 100%. But Jack Elliott, for some reason, was not nominated for this award. How he wasn't, I don't know. Did he not play enough games? Did he not start enough games? It blows my mind. But and Jack Elliott not in the Young Player of the Year award, and then comeback player is Julian Carranza, who I think has a real strong case. I know the talk with the Extra Time career was, well, what's Julian Carranza coming back from? Because when you think of the comeback player of the year award, it's a player that's coming back from injury. And yeah, Julian Kranza isn't coming back from injury, but Union fans joked and said he's coming back from playing on a terrible Miami team, which is true. Where this guy was cast off, Union fans we've talked about in the past were pissed when it was announced the Union were taking Julian Kranza on loan. All these MLS people were saying, yeah, he's not an offensive player. He's a defensive first striker. He's at 14 goals this season, 9 assists. I think Julian has a real strong case to win Comeback Player of the Year. And then Jim Curtin's nominated for Coach of the Year, which, it's going to be tough. There's 4 really good coaches, in my opinion, that could and all have a strong case to win this award, with Steve Trungolo, the coach of LAFC, Pat Noonan with Cincinnati, Wilfred Nancy of Montreal, and obviously Jim Curtin. And I think for me, it probably comes between Pat Noonan and Wilfred Nancy. And last year, I said Wilfred Nancy did not win it. I went to Bruce Arena, but you look what Wilfred Nancy's done in back-to-back seasons with Montreal. Montreal's having a stronger season this year than they did last year, and I think Wilfred had a really strong case to win Manager of the Season. And again, he has another strong case this season. And if I had to vote right now, I'm stuck between Pat Noonan and Wilfred Nancy. And by the time voting comes around, hopefully I'll have my choice made up for coach. But again, I'll go ahead and give you guys my team of the season when it's time to officially announce these awards when we get closer. But I just wanted to bring them up in case you guys hadn't seen the Union players nominated for awards. Let's go ahead and talk about the last bit of news. And I mentioned this today on Twitter. We're recording this podcast on Monday evening, and I brought up the expansion draft. I know the season's still going on, but there's still plenty of time for us to talk about the historic Union season. But I did want to jump ahead and think about the expansion draft, where the expansion draft will take place on Friday, November 11th. November 10th, you guys will all see the list of eligible players that aren't protected by teams. The following 5 teams in MLS had players selected last year by Charlotte, and they can't get players taken from them this season. And they are Austin FC, Atlanta United, DC United, LAFC, and NYCFC. And every other team in MLS are eligible to have players selected. Teams can protect up to 12 players. And remember, Generation Adidas players who have not yet graduated and homegrown players that are 25 years old or younger under the year in which the expansion draft takes place, they're eligible to be protected. And so all the Union's homegrown players are protected. And so I came up with a list of 11 players, 11 give-me's, you guys would probably say, with Andre Blake, Kai Wagner, Bizo, Glesnes, Elliott, Martinez, Bedoya, Flock, Gazdag, Ua, and Kranza. And this list isn't in any order. It doesn't matter what order I put these players in. They all get protected. But the players that are eligible to be selected that I don't have listed are Jesus Bueno, Richard Adada, Corey Burke, Joe Bendick, and new signing Abasa Armia, and the Ghanaian center back that the Union signed a few months ago, who is now officially joined the Union in Philadelphia. So don't expect to see him at all this season, but to see him finally be with the team and training with the team, that's great to see. And so for that 12th spot, for me, it comes down to Jesus Bueno and Udada, where a lot of Union fans, I tweeted this and I asked, who would you protect? And a lot of you guys said you would protect Udada. Some people said take off Kai Wagner. Some people said take off Ale Bedoya, because if he gets selected and then he can just threaten to retire, you're not taking Bedoya off this list, because you have to deal with the whole drama where, yeah, Bedoya would probably retire if he got drafted by St. Louis, but you're going to do right by Bedoya and put him on this list. Say, hey, look, you're one of our most valuable players. We don't want to put you in the expansion draft. We don't want you to go through the potential drama where you get selected by St. Louis and now you're going to play for St. Louis. So there's no way I see the Union taking off Bedoya on this list. Kai Wagner, I saw some fans say, hey, leave him unprotected because you're going to sell him, so it doesn't matter. Well, it actually does matter because, like I mentioned, the expansion draft is Friday, November 11th, and the transfer window doesn't open until January. And so it doesn't matter what agreements the union may have in place with teams to sell Kai Wagner. If the union leave Kai Wagner unprotected, St. Louis can go ahead and take Kai Wagner. And whatever deal the union had agreed with said team, it doesn't matter because he's not a union player. And if we're being even more technical, technically, Kai Wagner isn't a Philadelphia Union player because all players in MLS have their contracts owned by MLS. They're not owned by Philadelphia Union. They're not owned by any other team in MLS. The contracts are MLS specific contracts. Yes, they might play for said team, but technically the union don't own Kai Wagner. It's MLS that owns Kai Wagner. They own his contract. And so for fans to say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and leave Kai Wagner unprotected, it's not going to happen because the union are going to want to get money for Kai Wagner. And remember, because Kai Wagner isn't a homegrown, MLS is going to still take some money. It's better than the 10-15% that they used to take. I believe it's only 5% MLS takes from sales now for players that have been bought from overseas. But the union, of course, are going to keep Kai Wagner protected because they want to get that money for selling Kai. And let's say the union have an agreement with Leeds United. If he gets selected by St. Louis doesn't have to accept that agreement between Philadelphia and Leeds because he's a St. Louis player. He's not a Philadelphia player. And like I said, technically, MLS owns Kai Wagner, so would MLS still honor that deal if the union had a deal in place with Leeds United, but Kai Wagner is now a St. Louis player? Maybe, and I don't think we've seen anything like that in MLS, so it would be very interesting to see what would happen in that case if the union did leave Kai Wagner unprotected, but they had a deal in place to sell Kai Wagner. So, no, I don't think Kai's going to be left unprotected. And in my opinion, it comes down to two players, like I said, Jesus Bueno and Richard Udada. And if I'm Ernst Tanner, I'm protecting Jesus Bueno. 6 goals, 2 assists with Union 2. There's enough tape on this guy for teams to know, okay, there's a player in here. But a guy like Richard Udada coming to the Union, there's no tape on him. There's limited tape from Union 2, not enough tape for teams to say, hey, look, let's go ahead and take a flyer on this guy. And yeah, he's played with the Kenya national team. That may be intriguing for St. Louis, but still, I don't think there's enough risk for St. Louis to say, hey, look, let's go ahead and take this guy. We don't know exactly what we have. And look, the union don't even know exactly what they have. Yeah, we read that article in The Athletic where they talked about how the union have their own analytics where they scout players and determine how they'll fit into the union's team. And so maybe St. Louis looks at something like that and says, hey, look, the union signed this guy. They see that he's potentially going to fit into their team. If they believe he's a good player, maybe we should take a flyer on him. But again, I just think there's so little tape on him that St. Louis wouldn't take a flyer. And so I think Jesus Bueno would be that player that they would take if he's left unprotected. And we'll see what happens. Again, the expansion draft isn't until the 11th. The players left unprotected isn't out until November 10th. So plenty of time for us still to discuss this. And I'm sure at the end of the season, we will. I'll have you guys on the podcast and we'll talk about what players you would protect and whatnot. But right now, as things stand, those are my 11 players. And if I had to give you a 12th right now, it would be Jesus Bueno. But let's go ahead and talk about that Charlotte FC versus Philadelphia Union game. And Yeah, there is no keys to the game because I didn't do a preview episode. I didn't write an article for you guys. My apologies. Craziness dealing with trying to evacuate because of a hurricane. And there is no 3 stars in this game for me. Every single player on the field was extremely disappointing in my opinion. And so I'll go ahead and give quick thoughts from this Charlotte game. Number one takeaway is Jack Elliott, we all saw it, was subbed out for an injury to his cheekbone. Jim Curtin said he would get scans after the game. Jonathan Tannenwald yesterday on Sunday announced that scans came back negative on Jack Elliott. He's good to go. That is huge. Because I did see some fans on social media saying, uh-oh, could this become the whole COVID situation again? Ale Bedoya is still injured. Jack Elliott potentially injured. Losing 2 key pieces there. And Jack Elliott's fine. He's good to go against Toronto, Jonathan Tannenwald said. So that's great news. Ale Bedoya, you were never going to play him on turf, especially wet turf. And I don't blame Jim Curtin for leaving him out. But speaking of Ale Bedoya, that is back-to-back games now that the Union haven't won with Ale not in the starting lineup. And I think we are starting to see just how crucial Ale is. And I talked about this on the Spaces episode very briefly. If you guys missed it, LA signed a new 1-year contract that's good for the 2023 season. Great to have LA back. Huge player. And we're starting to see this team isn't the same when he's not on the field. We miss his leadership. We miss, what he offers defensively, what he offers offensively. He's just a really well-rounded player, and he's having a career season with 6 goals this year for the Union. And so to see the Union struggling without Ali on the field really shouldn't be a surprise because LA doesn't miss many games. We all complain and moan about, he doesn't need to be playing 90 minutes every single game. But, maybe we're starting to see things start to fall apart when he's not on the field. And this is what Jim Curtin had to say about how the team looks when LA is on the field and when he isn't on the field.
You guys have seen when he's not in our team, it's different. We look a little bit different. He's if you take the captain off of any team in this league, there's a big drop off, and it's the same with our group. So I think that guys put a lot into the game. We just weren't sharp enough. So yeah, certainly like I said, any team in this league, if your captain isn't available, it's a drop off. And we talked about before the game, guys not trying to do more on the field soccer wise, but maybe leadership wise, everybody taking a stronger, a bigger role. It was something that we wanted to make tonight, the last time we went on the road all season, and we didn't get the job done. So we know that. Again, it's one game. We're mad about it. Don't get me wrong. We're going to be pissed off. We don't like to concede goals like this. But I know we'll have a really good response against Toronto at home.
And I do want to tell you guys, that's the second time that we had heard at that point. Jim Curtin mentioned in his press conference that we're going to be ready for Toronto. We're going to be ready for Toronto. And so I think it was very evident that Jim was pissed when he was speaking to us during his press conference. No player was made available to speak. And I think that tells you about the mentality the players were feeling after that game. I mean, to go out there and just get humiliated 4-0 by Charlotte, who aren't a bad team. Don't take losing to Charlotte as, they're one of the worst teams in MLS. They're not. They've grown and have come a long way since when the Union took them on, went back in April maybe, when we won 2-0. It's a completely different team, and I think you go ahead and look the way that they played Swiderski as the number 10, as opposed to playing him as a striker. He's been an excellent number 10 for them ever since they switched his position about a month ago with the assists and the goals, and he's really combining very well with just the whole team, getting them all involved. It's not just the Carl Swiderski show. It's becoming a team. And we saw that. I know against the Union it was the Denny Rios show, but a lot of the space that Rios had to run into is because of the space that Schwiderski was making for him and other teammates to go into. I thought the Union throughout this game, I thought they played way too narrow. We didn't get enough crosses into the box. And maybe I shouldn't say we didn't get enough crosses. We didn't get enough dangerous crosses. A lot of our crosses look lackluster. They were just hoof it up and hope for the best. And a lot of that starts with Kai Wagner. We know he has the best delivery out of every single player on the team. A lot of our service comes from the left side of the field. And you guys have talked about it on social media where, yeah, we wonder what this team's going to look at with no Kai Wagner potentially next season if he gets sold. Can Matt Real offer that same offensive production that Kai offers us? Would Leon Flock offer that to us? Is that player not on their roster? You guys have suggested a whole bunch of ideas on social media. And we're going to see this Sunday what this team potentially looks like next season without Kai Wagner as he misses this game due to the red card he got against Charlotte, which, by the way, 100% a red card. I get it. Kai had his hand up there, trying to make himself bigger, was already on a yellow card. And I think if Kai wasn't on a yellow card already, then I don't think it would have been a straight red. I think it would have just been a yellow. I believe that's what it was, 2 yellows, and he was off. I don't think it was a straight red. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the Union do this Sunday against Toronto. I fully expect Matt Real to get the start. It would be wild, though, to see after Jim Curtin's talked multiple times this season saying, yeah, we have faith in Matt Real. Matt Real's going to replace Kai Wagner one day. To see Jim go and play Bizer on the right, Nate Harry on the left. That would be crazy after Jim Curtin says all that about Matt Real and he doesn't even go with starting Matt Real. I don't think that's going to happen at all, but yeah, it would be very interesting, I think. And just going back to this game against Charlotte, just only one shot on target for the Union. That was Gazdag's long-range shot in the first half around the 34th, 35th minute. Other than that, I mean, not good enough offensively. Too many giveaways. The Union were dispossessed 130 times, which Charlotte lost the ball 5 more times. I thought the Union would have just blown Charlotte out in this category, but it was pretty even. But I don't know. I guess when you lose 4-0, it looks a lot worse than what it really was. I think another thing that didn't help this game, and I'm not blaming the referee at all, and I'm not even going to blame the turf, because Jim Curtin, I asked him, and I didn't want to ask him this, but I was like, there's enough people on social media that are complaining about the turf, blaming the turf for the reason why the Union got blown out. I was like, I got to ask him this, and he said, yeah, no, the turf's not to blame. Yeah, they hate turf, but both teams play on the turf. And I knew Jim wasn't going to make that excuse, but here's the thing, right? Charlotte played most of the games on turf. The Union hardly ever play on turf, and back-to-back games the Union didn't win, where the front three looked just out of sync. Both of those games were played on turf, and yes, the Union flew down a day earlier to go ahead and train on the turf. But I don't care. Training on turf and playing on turf week in, week out is completely different. And I do think that played a little bit into it, especially when you have players that have never played on turf in their life. But the thing that really killed this game was 37 stoppages in this game from the referee. That's just way too many times to blow your whistle. 20 times you blew it in the first half. That kills the whole rhythm of the game. You can't get into it. And credit to Charlotte for not letting that put them off the game. You could tell that the Union, like I said, were playing way too narrow. I don't know. I don't want to say that they didn't care, but you got the sense that Charlotte was ready to play at 100% and the Union were down at like 75, 80%. They just didn't seem as interested as Charlotte. And this game was back and forth, and Jim Curtin says it all the time, where the Union aren't built to go back and forth. And there was too many times in this game where the Union would go down, have a chance, lose the ball. Charlotte would go down, have a shot, and then the Union would counterattack, lose the ball again. It was way too much of that. I thought the Union probably should have tried to hold on to the ball, especially with Jack Malin in this lineup, a guy who's built for possession soccer. And they didn't do that, or didn't do it enough to my liking. Just way too much back and forth, and that was a game that the Union were never going to win if it was back and forth. And maybe that's what teams are going to do come playoff time against the Union, try to do a back and forth game. Subaru Park, though, gets pretty hostile, and I think we're going to see teams come into Subaru Park come playoff time and play low blocks like we saw last season. But yeah, just way too many stoppages, and I'm not saying the referee is why the Union lost this game, but it did take the Union off of their game, how they wanted to play. And just another thing I want to bring up before I get done talking about Charlotte is, people were complaining about, oh, well, the Union always play bad coming out of the international breaks. And so I looked 4 games prior to this game against Charlotte. The first game that they played after an international break was actually against Charlotte. The Union won that game 2-0 at Subaru Park. Then they played Cincinnati at home, which was a 1-1 draw. And then they played Cincinnati away and lost that game 3-1. And then they welcomed Orlando City into Subaru Park after Orlando City's US Open Cup game, and they beat Orlando City 5-1. And then you add the 4-0 loss to Charlotte. And so the Union have been very inconsistent when it comes to the international break. And this is one of those games where the Union just didn't look as prepared, didn't look as ready compared to Charlotte. And I think that's all it comes down to. You play this game again, I think it's definitely going to be a lot different than a 4-0 scoreline. I don't know if, the weather, the hurricane in Charlotte played into the effects of the players' minds, knowing that, hey, look, we're traveling where a hurricane's going to be traveling through, even though at the time it wasn't a hurricane, but still, you're thinking about all that rain, you're thinking about all that wind. You don't want to play a game in those conditions. And by the time that the game kicked off, it was not raining at all. I mean, yeah, it was windy, but I do think that was probably on some of the players' minds. They just didn't seem ready to play this game. And I saw some people on social media say, well, this is on Jim Curtin for not having the players ready. And maybe to a sense that's right. But again, you look, Charlotte, they had a win against at the beginning of the season after an international break. They beat Orlando City 5-1. And so the Union have beat teams out of the international break. Now, I guess you can flip it and say, look, and the Union, after international breaks, 2 of those games have been on the road. And 2 of those games on the road, the Union have got blown out. So there's a whole bunch of ways that you guys can flip the script, have your own narrative, however you want it. I choose to believe that, and this is just a one-off game, and maybe some of you guys are like, you're too biased there. It's the Union are bad after international breaks, and maybe you guys are right too, but that's pretty much all my thoughts on the game. So I want to go ahead and break down these goals as I always do. The first goal, first of 4 from Danny Rios, comes in the 24th minute. And so this play develops with Julian Kranza going out to save a ball, and it's going out of bounds. Does a good job to make this not go out for a throw-in, but he kicks it aimlessly. He tries to kick it to Leon Flock, and Leon Flock's not able to get the ball, and so Charlotte goes and picks up the ball. But as soon as Charlotte picks up the ball, Daniel Gazak puts pressure on Charlotte, and Charlotte have a turnover with Jose Martinez reacting first to the ball. And as soon as Jose takes his first touch, he's just way too slow on the ball. A terrible pass gets turned over, and now you have a counterattack right here from Charlotte. You have a 4-on-3 with Jose Martinez completely out of this picture. You have a player, it's really a 5-on-3, 5-on-4 if you want to count Jose Martinez as one of the players getting back. He's out of position because he lost the ball. And so it's really a 5-on-3 here from Charlotte. Charlotte have a lot of space to run into on the left side of the field. Nate Harrell's not even on the screen here. completely out of position because he expected the Union to have the ball. So he's pushing up because the Union he thought were going to be attacking, but they lose the ball with Nate Harriel. And so Jose Martinez does a good job to eventually get back here to force the bad pass from Charlotte. And Jack Elliott's going to go ahead and stick a leg out here, but it's a really poor clearance. And by the time that Jack Elliott goes and steps to the ball, it's now a 4-on-3 for Charlotte. So they still have the advantage. And the ball falls to Schwiderski. He's going to go ahead and play the ball out left. And as soon as he plays the ball out left, again, Nate Harriel still out of position here. And they're going to go ahead and just pick his head up, play the ball across goal, and it's a tap in there for Rios. Kai Wagner caught out of position, didn't follow his guy, got caught ball watching. And we saw a lot of this in this game where the Union just don't track their runners, let their runners step in front of them, and by the time that they react, it's a goal. And hey, great goal there for Charlotte. Comes from a Jose Martinez turnover, and I know a lot of fans were complaining about Jose Martinez over the weekend, saying that they're done with him. This is too many times that he's done this season where he's given the ball away. My argument would be, how many times has he stopped counterattack? So, you get the good and bad with Jose Martinez. The second goal, though, from Charlotte, comes from Rios, his second goal of the match. And this actually comes from a throw-in where the Union, the last couple of weeks, they've not defended dead ball situations well. Long throw-in here from Charlotte. The ball is going to go ahead and fall to a Charlotte player. And the Union actually have themselves positioned really well in the box. They have all their players that they're supposed to mark. You have Jacob Glesnes on the guy who eventually receives the ball from the throw-in. You have Jack Elliott who's in line. You have Kai Wagner who's in line. Neither one of these guys, Jack Elliott or Kai Wagner, have a Charlotte attacker near them. And so they're defending this well, and there's really no trouble for either one of those guys. But Jacob Glesnes can't win the ball back. The Charlotte player, it's so hard to tell from this angle which player that was, so my apologies for not saying what player that was exactly. He does a good job to hold this ball up, and so he's going to go ahead and lay the ball off to Uziak, number 7, and probably mispronouncing that name. My apologies again. And he's going to go ahead and just be really fancy. He has 2 Union players on him in Nate Harriel and Jack McGlynn. And he does a good job to just hold this ball up and get by them. And so eventually the ball is just rolling around in the back. It's all sloppy and everything. Ball's still with a Charlotte player. Nate Harriel is going to go ahead and have a slide tackle. He misses, stabs at the ball. Jose Martinez is going to go ahead and stab at the ball. He misses. Jacob Glesnes goes and stabs at the ball. He misses. And then Liam Flock goes and stabs at the ball, and he also bites too. And it's a goal, 2-0 for Charlotte. Just way too many stabs. The Union had an opportunity to clear that ball out of the box. They did not. And again, it all came from that throw-in where we've seen the Union struggle now the last couple of weeks. Is that a concern come playoff time where teams start to take advantage of throw-ins, where the Union have been the most dominant team with the fewest goals conceded on set pieces? Is that going to be an issue come playoff time? Potentially. It's something I think you guys should definitely keep an eye on as we head into playoffs. The third goal here, and this is just poor from the Union. Nobody pressures the ball. You have Corey Burke that's doing a half-ass press job. To his credit, he's the only player here that's pressing the ball. You have Julian Kranza not really interested in pressing the ball. Paxton Aronson completely out of position. Corey Burke goes from the left side of the field to the right side of the field to try to press and win this ball back. He does not get the ball. And as soon as Corey Burke goes and attacks the ball, you have Uziak making a run off of Nate Harriel, and Nate Harriel's completely caught out of position. So the ball's going to go right by Nate. You have Jack Elliott, who's now lost his guy. Kai Wagner's in position on the far-sided run. You have Nate Harriel, again, out of position. Now that means Jacob Glesnes is going to have to go and go towards the ball, which is fine. Jacob Glesnes does a good job cutting this angle. And by the time that the ball gets crossed in, Jacob Glesnes actually deflects this ball. He blocks it. And unfortunate for Jacob, the ball falls back to Uziak. And he's able to go ahead and just beat Nate Harriel easily. And now Jose Martinez didn't come back and track his guy, number 6. Jose Martinez not really sure where he is. He's not in the picture at all. Completely off the screen. And that forces Kai Wagner to leave his guy at the far post and make a challenge. And yeah, Kai Wagner's making his body bigger and gets a handball. But yeah, this all could have been avoided if Jose Martinez would have tracked back and got with his guy. Jacob Glesnes does a great job to block this ball. Unfortunate that the ball, after he blocks it, falls right back to the Charlotte player. And because Jose is out of position, Kai Wagner has to make a late challenge, and it's a handball as he tries to extend his body. And then Rios scores the penalty. And then the goal in the 91st minute from Charlotte. Again, and this is just poor from the Union, where nobody's really pressuring the ball. Jacob Glesnes comes all the way from his defensive end to pressure the ball, where you should have had Nate Harriel cutting in or Jose Martinez cutting in, filling into that position where Jacob Glesnes just left. Neither one of those guys fall into that position. And the press actually worked from Jacob Glesnes because he forces Charlotte to go backwards and reset. But as soon as they reset in the midfield, just nobody's picking up any of the Charlotte players in the midfield. And so they're just able to go ahead and pass the ball around, have a ton of space. Kai Wagner and Paxton Aronson, by the time that the ball comes on the right side of the field, neither one of them closed down the Charlotte player fast enough. And so he's able to go ahead and just reset, pick out his pass. Charlotte's going to go ahead and just work this ball. And you look, okay, the 4 defenders are in good position here. You have Nate Harriel, you have Jacob Glesnes, you have Matt Real, and Leon Flock. And I think I said Kai Wagner and Paxton Aronson there should have shut down the guy on the right side of the field. That was Leon Flock. My apologies. But regardless, just nobody steps to the ball. And the movement from Charlotte was excellent here. And again, the Union get caught ball watching, and it's a simple goal for Charlotte tapping again. And just mistakes that could have been avoided. They aren't your typical Union defense against Charlotte, and could have all been avoided. It was not, but there you have. Spent way too long trying to break down those goals, and I got to do something better to try to make these goal breakdowns better. Maybe you guys are learning something from them. Maybe you guys aren't. I try to make a YouTube channel, but every time I try to type in Free Kick Pod, I can't find it on YouTube because I want to use that YouTube channel not only to start going live for the podcast, but I want to use that channel to start breaking down goals so you guys can see what I'm talking about when I'm talking about these goals. But let's go ahead and talk about Blunder of the Week. And I was going to give Blunder of the Week to Charlotte FC for their policy on toddlers needing an actual game day ticket to enter the stadium. But I'm glad that I'm recording this podcast on Monday, that I waited, because the Blunder of the Week is going to go to the NWSL, the league as a whole, the coaches, the executives, as well as United States Soccer Federation. It was reported from former U.S. Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates did an investigation into the NWSL and the USSF, and she came out and said, "Our investigation has revealed a league in which abuse and misconduct, verbal and emotional abuse and sexual misconduct had become systemic, spanning multiple teams, coaches, and victims. Abuse in the NWSL is rooted in a deeper culture in women's soccer beginning in youth levels that normalizes verbal abusive coaching and blurs boundaries between coaches and players." That is from former U.S. Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates. And I'll leave a link in the show if you guys want to read this whole report. It's 338 pages, I believe. It's a lot, and I've only read some of it. But what you guys will read if you choose to read this. Yeah, it's sickening, and you're kind of lost for words because you hear rumors, you hear what former players are talking about that's went down with coaches in the league, and to see the amount of times that these reports from these players have been swept under the rug from owners, from coaches, from the league as itself, from the United States Soccer Federation, it's sick. And like I said, I've only read just bits and pieces of this investigation. It's a lot, but from what I've read, what I've seen on Twitter, it makes you extremely sick in your stomach. And so, yeah, it's kind of a crappy way to end a podcast on such a dull moment, but it's one that needed to be brought up. If you guys hadn't seen this on social media, that the investigation has been complete. And now the NWSL still doing their own investigation. This was an independent investigation from Sally Yates. But yeah, I don't know what else the NWSL is going to find. This was a very, very thorough investigation. And again, it's just really, really, really sickening. The reports that I've read in this investigation. So if you guys have the stomach for it, yeah, go ahead and check out what's been going on for years in NWSL and in women's soccer. It's sad. It's not how I went down the podcast. That's for sure. After podcast that I felt it's been full of energy. I know the Charlotte game's a lot of negativity, but we started the episode off with a lot of positivity, in my opinion, and now we end it with negativity. But there's no way I was not going to bring this up on the podcast. But if you guys aren't following the podcast on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow Free Kick Pod wherever you get your podcasts, The Free Kick. And again, as always, check out the website, thefreekick.net. I'll give you guys a match preview for the Toronto game. I'm not sure when I have that up on the website, probably towards the end of the week. I'm going to try to get some Jim Curtin quotes in there from the press conference on Thursday. So, yeah, probably Friday or Saturday, as I normally do. You guys will have a preview article up on the website. But, yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the positivity from the beginning of this podcast and the negativity. Whenever you guys are listening to this podcast, hopefully it doesn't ruin your day. Hopefully your day can get better from reading the reports from the NWSL. But yeah, it's just really speechless. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.